Reed Terrell, another episode of 2-1 Live. Today, we got a real crazy topic. It's start snitching. Now, I know people probably watching right now. They're like, oh, he a rat. I ain't watching this. I can't watch rat. That's not what we talking about, man. We talking about the violence and the crime that's going on in our communities and how we can help bring it to an end and how to stop snitching and don't snitch and snitches get snitches and people is rats, how that is hurting our communities because nobody wants to speak up, right? And we got some people that are qualified to speak on this topic, right? Ladies first, I got a former police officer, damn near 20 years on the force. Introduce yourself.
I'm Alicia. I'm a Philadelphia police officer, retired. Did 17 years, retired 3 years ago. Now a registered nurse.
Wow. And then to my right, I got Shuja. Tell them who you are, what you do, and a little bit of your history, brother.
I'm Shuja Moore. Excuse me. Currently a workforce advisor for JEVS. Created a docu-series around the reentry and incarceration process because I served 12 years and I was in the streets before that. So I have an understanding of kind of the psychology that goes to committing crimes and then awakening up from that and changing your life around. I grew up in West Philly, had two great parents. Unfortunately, I got caught up in this snitching culture, this gangster culture, and I'm out of that now and I'm trying to change the community.
Good. And Shuja is being modest. I checked out Walkie's, his documentary series on YouTube. Y'all should too. Very, very well done documentary. Very good program. I wish you all the best with that.
Thank you.
And then over here we got Giovanni. What's up, bro?
Yeah, absolutely. How you doing, man? Thanks
I'm well.
Thanks for the invite.
Of course. Tell the people about you and some of your history.
Well, my name is Giovanni. I'm a returning citizen. I spent 26 years incarcerated at Graterford. I was sentenced to life in prison as a kid. Through some very, very favorable rulings through the courts, I was able to regain my freedom. And since then, I've been home for about 2 years now.
Okay. What are you doing now?
I work at the Philadelphia airport.
Okay.
I do paralegal work for 2 lawyers.
Cool.
And I'm also a member of a PMG professional men's group that comes under Men's Fit.
Okay.
So there's a group of brothers who all have a past, with incarceration, that's out trying to do some positive things in the community. So that's what we're about right there.
Cool. So we got some things to get into tonight on 2-1 Live. First, what I want to do is mention where we are today and thank them for sponsoring our location. We're at Kismet Coworking in Chestnut Hill. And if you're not familiar with Kismet Coworking, they're a great space. They provide a lot of the amenities that you're used to in co-working and more. And they also have a few locations. They're at Spring Arts, they're in Manayunk, and you can visit them for all of your co-working and event space needs. All right, so we got to get into a little bit of this topic, right? We're going to talk about the street code, right? You brothers are familiar with the streets. You definitely familiar with the streets. You was policing them for years and years. But it's a code. It's a code in the street, or has that code went away? Is there no longer a code, right? So the first question I want to ask is, what was the original no snitching code all about? Anybody volunteer where that came from?
I'll go. I don't know where it originally came from, but we do have a lot of history, even dating back to the 70s with Black Panthers. I think a lot of it came from that, how we were being treated as far as a community, minorities being beaten, and I think that's where it started from. We'll help out our own. We won't let the police know or anybody else know. We'll take care of ourselves. So I believe that involved into no snitching. They're not going to tell. They're not going to tell us. That's my belief.
Giovanni?
Yeah, I think that to piggyback off of what she was saying, I think that it kind of always been there because of the relationships that we had in the community with law enforcement, people in authority, kind of like doing things on our own. It's involved, like when it first started, it was more of a kind of like a street thing where guys who were entrenched into the street culture, they would, like, it wasn't cool for you to snitch. Like if me and you doing something, and I get caught, it wasn't cool for me to tell on you because I'm involved. You know what I'm saying? So that's where it kind of originated from some of the
And vice
origins.
versa, even if it wasn't somebody that was kind of like on your side, you know, one of your mans and them doing something wrong, even if it was someone else that was associated in the street culture, it wasn't cool to snitch even on them.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know?
and you get a stigma. You get a really bad stigma that carries
Right.
with you for a long, long time. And in fact, it actually never goes away. Once you tell on somebody,
Right.
it never goes away.
Yeah, I've heard people call people kids rats, right? Because they daddy.
They call them mice, huh? This is a point you had made earlier. I don't think snitching is just, the no snitch rule is just a black thing. I mean, as a law enforcement officer, you know that there was what is it called, the Blue Shield or something like that?
The blue code.
The Blue Code, and in the corporate realm, there's, what's the word?
Whistleblower.
Yeah,
Whistleblower.
getting a whistleblower or whistleblowing. So no snitching is just a part of, you know, it's in a lot of different realms. As it relates to black people, I can't sit here and say that I know where it came from, but I know it was perpetuated for me in rap songs, when I went outside and hung on the corner. But like you said, even growing up with my brother, we used to call the baby brother a snitch if he told on us, you know. So, you know, it was just this mindset. I don't know where it came from, whether it was movies or what, but you're not really supposed to get anybody else in trouble.
Right.
At the end of the day, especially being black. And we know that a lot of institutions already are systemically geared against us. And so we don't want to see another brother or sister, you know, getting caught up in some type of systematic trouble.
Right, and as well, when you put all of those things together, especially in society now, it's like we can see why people will argue both sides, right? Like you mentioned the Blue Shield. I definitely want to get into that with you and ask you about a little bit more what that means. But when there's two sides that are against each other, obviously crime and crime fighters, but you got, you know, the crime fighters protecting each other from what may have really been wrong, right? And putting people away in jail for things that they may not have done or may not have done to the extent. But then you have the other side that is doing, you know, wrong, but there's no one speaking up. Not even, especially today, it's not even the people that are in the streets, you know. And as you mentioned, that whole stop snitching thing was for you want to go and be, you know, doing some nonsense, that's on you and y'all. But if you're not in that, you shouldn't be considered a snitch or a rat or anything like that. It's like, I'm protecting my community. But I think nowadays it's everyone, you know, it's the little lady on the corner. And we've even seen retaliation crimes for people and people that don't want to go to court or don't want to testify because they fear that something may happen. Before I go down and talk about who was these codes made to protect, like I'm kind of getting into already, the Blue Code, that's something that is don't snitch between officers, right?
Correct.
Can you speak at all toward where that came from and how deep you may have seen that go in the police force?
How far it goes back, I don't know. But you kind of understand, I don't want to say you kind of understand it to an extent, like you said, as far as the streets. Because it's more than just that person, it's their family. So you kind of feel guilty on that. Am I going to be a home wrecker? They got children.
Right.
And like you said, you get marked. Oh, she told or he told. Now I'm going to get retaliation. Now what's going to happen to my family, to my career.
So that thing also happened behind the shield?
Oh, yeah, things happen, yeah.
They mark people for not sticking to the code?
Some people, yes. Unfortunately, you have seen it. I mean, people speak up to do the right thing, and they get reprimanded for it, which they shouldn't. You know, because you're doing what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And unfortunately, powers that be, they don't like it, and things happen.
Wow.
So.
Wow. That's kind of crazy. I'm gonna move on. We're gonna touch on that a little bit when we talk about reform and the whole nine. But these street codes, who was this made to protect?
Well, originally, I mean, it was really made to protect the people that was involved in crime. I mean, like if you out there in the streets, you live in kind of like an antisocial life. If you committing crime, you antisocial. So you're living off the grid. Like
the drug dealers and everybody's on Instagram now.
Exactly. You're not doing things the way normal society functions. You're operating outside of that. So when you snitching, when you decide to snitch or you doing something in the street, it's like I said, it's not going to be looked upon favorably if you out there telling on somebody. And then if you get in jail, everybody going to know you snitching. You're going to have a problem in there.
Yeah, problem in there, for
Your
sure.
family going to have a problem. It's going to stay with you forever. Like, it's a real big stigma that's placed on you when you start telling on people.
And that brings me down to the street justice. Any of y'all ever, or even you, deal with or understand street justice? I understand, like, when you mentioned the Black Panther, you mentioned some of the distrust between the police and things like that in the community. People took things into their own hands. You know what I'm saying? And there was, and it's kind of still is a time where you're gonna get dealt with in the streets for whether it's snitching or whether it's anything you did against a rival or another block or another corner. Any of y'all deal with any street justice?
Well, to get into that, I think that in the Black community, there was an element that recognized that we weren't really going to find our power if we did things the traditional societal way. You know, we weren't really going to find success there. So there's a bit of the Robin Hood element, and this is just my opinion, but a Robin Hood element when it came to committing crimes. Like, I'm not going to get mines in the corporate world. They're not even going to let me in, so I'm going to get mines out the mud in the street. And people kind of celebrated that a little bit, and that goes into the Black Panthers and all that. It was like, yeah, he's getting his on his own. He's going to find his power, you know, and it really just got way taken out of hand. We were polluting our community and didn't really recognize it because we were on a search for power. But even the concept of snitching, I think that's letting, you know, people who are committing crimes set the terms of what this is. When at the end of the day, we're talking about protecting the community and not protecting the community.
Right.
And we need strong leadership to come out on the other side because it kind of became cool to, like you said, be antisocial. It got cool to get yours on your own. We kind of let them set the stage for what we're supposed to do and not supposed to do. And that's why, you know, I credit people such as yourself that's saying, look, listen, man, we got to step up as leaders. We know what's right. We do want to see our community grow and be better, and we have to set the stage. We talk about protecting our communities, man.
Right, right, for sure. Any of y'all want to speak to street justice, how that comes about?
The thing about that, you never know. I say, we can talk about it, but people really don't know how people want to react until it happens to you. And like a family member, like if you my brother, and he does something to you, you don't think I want to hurt him?
Right.
Of course I want to hurt him.
Right.
And that's how like most people feel. Like, that's my brother, that's my sister. They in a rage, they're mad, they're angry, so they just gonna act upon and do what they're gonna do. Because unfortunately, it is a lot of injustice. There's a lot of things that's happening that we know is wrong, and you're trying to figure out. We went to court, you done got video, you got witnesses, and they still got off. How?
Right.
What happened to that victim or that family?
And that can provoke you to want to take on some street justice.
So the next time, I'm not gonna say nothing. The next time, I'm gonna do it myself.
And even as you talk and you mentioned that it just makes the ball of this problem just such a tangled weave. Giovanni, you ever witness street justice? You ever hear about any instances of street justice or participate in some of it yourself?
Well, I never participated.
He said, I ain't get ready. I just got out. I'm not about to.
No, I never participated. I think, you know, because I went to prison at such a young age. I was only 16.
Wow.
So my experiences on the street wasn't that long. So most of my life I spent in prison. So, but being around that mentality, like the criminal mentality, knowing how they think and knowing how things transpire. I've heard, you know, multiple stories about why things happen. Like you'll hear, like somebody might get into something on the street, somebody get killed, right? And they got family on the street, and then somebody that's telling on them. So they make a call or they get a visit, and they say, "Listen, I got this boy that's telling on me. He can't come to court. I need you to take care of that." So because of the love they got for him, if it's a family member or a close friend, they go to try to rectify the situation by taking a boy out that's telling. That's part of like the street justice. That's kind of like even a balance, like because like when you catch a homicide, you know how much it really costs to defend yourself against a homicide. You need at least, at a minimum, $250,000 to defend yourself against that kind of charge. And how many people you know that's on the street, that's hustling, that got that kind of money?
Oh, I got it.
None of them.
Exactly.
They spend it all on Gucci belts. So we talked about this a little bit, but I'm gonna bring this over to you, Shuja. Do you think adhering to the no snitching code gives young black men the impression that not snitching makes them a real man?
Of course. Of course. So I did 12 years in prison. And what I saw was, a lot of people, such as including myself, we wanted to be gangsters, we wanted to be men, we wanted for people to respect and fear us. But over time, as I began to do more and more time, I just saw that I was surrounded by a bunch of lost little boys. And I was a lost little boy too. And we were followers, trying to be something that a lot of us weren't. That didn't mean we weren't tough, that didn't mean we weren't able to defend ourselves. But to hurt people, that's not what we really wanted to be about. So yeah, those kids are trying to be men, but they're lost in following what they believe they're supposed to do to find their manhood.
Anyone want to add to that?
Another thing about the no snitching thing, right, is about credibility too. So just say you get involved into a situation in the street and something happened, but then you keep your mouth shut. You're gaining street credibility by keeping your mouth shut.
Sure.
And it's only fueling a fire. You know what I'm saying? So that's a part of it too. So, it's about credibility. It's about having a good name in your neighborhood and all of that. So when you don't tell, it helps increase your good name. As crazy as that may sound, but that's what happens. But remember, they're living outside of the normal society. So,
right.
The snitching thing don't apply when you're in the streets.
Right.
That's how you look at it.
That's totally it. The crazy part is, and I know y'all can attest to this, it's still going on. There's still a lot of snitching going on, right? When people are involved in the streets or not, it's still a lot of it going on. But I think the guise of, I would never, I ain't no brand, I ain't this, that, the guise of that, to y'all points, is what helps build people's street credit or make them think that they're a real man and stuff like that. But for a lot of times, that's a facade. Like you mentioned, you get hit with a homicide, you get hit with some of these charges, and they like, look, tell on this person or whatever it may be, we know it's going on. You know what I'm saying?
Listen, to that point, I mean, that's another thing that I saw. I mean, you do all this time, and this no snitching. Everybody's snitching, for real, for real. Yeah. Who's not snitching? What are they talking about? No snitching. You go to jail, the majority of people get booked behind somebody telling on them. Yeah. And most cases end in a plea deal. People snitching on themselves. Yeah. So it's a facade. It's really a fake thing that's perpetuated in the head that you got to be something that you're not.
What are the downsides? If people, if we were to start a culture of people telling on who's doing the crime in our communities, is there a downside to that?
If we tell on them, well, because I don't believe in the system as it stands right now. So I don't have a direct answer to that, but putting somebody in prison isn't really making our community safer, and it isn't a guarantee that that person who enters is going to come out a better person. But at the same time, we definitely need to find a remedy to the people who are polluting our communities and destroying our communities and making them unsafe to live. So,
what would you say that remedy is?
I think there's a difference between ignorance and evilness. You talked about evilness earlier. There are people who are evil, and those people need to be locked away. But I know when I went to prison, I was ignorant. There's a difference. So when you find somebody that first touches the system and they lack certain development, I think there's a duty from society, because there's societal reasons why people are ignorant, to cultivate that person and give them an opportunity to educate themselves and equip themselves to be able to operate out here. And if they take that chance and go back to crime, then at that point they bought whatever comes.
Right. I do believe it takes a village. It really does. Like you said, a lot of people are ignorant. They don't know any better, or this is all they know.
Right.
They know nothing else but this. So it carries on and carries on. like you said, we do need strong leaders. Changes do need to be made the way society is going. Parents, it boils down to, in a sense, parents, not to say they're bad parents, but
Right.
we really have to pay attention to our
Right.
children, because sometimes they're not evil, like you said, acting out. They're acting out because they're missing something.
Right.
So if I can get love in the street, but I'm not getting love at home,
For sure.
or I'm being abused at home and I'm getting this, so their direction,
somewhere else.
they're going to go somewhere else. And so a lot of that is a huge problem. And now that people are turning a blind eye, I'm not saying anything. You're not going to say anything that you know something's wrong going on
Right.
in that household. You're not going to say nothing.
Especially if it's children involved.
Children.
To save a child and get a child on a better path or a right path or whatever, we got to take that type of chance and start standing up for the youth, because they got next. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead. You want to add?
No, I was listening to you. I was saying that I was, thinking about how, like he alluded to, like the snitching thing is really an illusion, because once a person really get caught up, they're going to tell anyway. They're going to tell. I mean, it has expanded to be something more than what it should have been. Like you see, like somebody that was on the people that's in the street. They not snitching. They don't want you snitching on people on the streets. But that has been expanded to people that's like regular citizens, like person that's a law-abiding citizen that's working every day, trying to take care of his family. They're expecting that person not to tell.
Right. Right.
And that's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous.
Like, you know what I'm saying? If I'm on the street and I do something that's unlawful, if I shoot at somebody or whatever the case may be, and a regular citizen see that, he's supposed to tell.
Right.
That's his job. He's a regular citizen. He's a civilian.
100%.
He's supposed to do that. But the way that things have evolved, people in the streets really expect for regular citizens not to tell too, and they delusional.
Right.
Right.
I couldn't agree more. And that brings us to a good point. That is, what happened to the street code of protecting women, children, and elders? It seemed like that's out the window, and we're seeing an uptick in crime, especially in our city toward the end of the year. There was a couple of children involved in shootings and what have you. What happened to that? What happened to the protecting folks? Means, just go ahead.
Well,
Like just go ahead. Like stand up and go. Yeah, you don't got to sneak.
the principles are different. Like back in the day, the principles, like when guys that was in the streets, the principles that they stood on was different. Now that's like kind of like laws.
Ain't no principles.
The area is like really like a wild, wild west. Like there is no principles. Guys do things and don't care. They got a don't care attitude no more. When back in the day, guys was doing things in the street, but it was principles in it. They wouldn't do things around their parents, or they, if you was with a grown up, I see you next time, or something like that. Women was off limits. Kids was definitely off limits. Like I've never heard of nobody shooting at somebody while he holding his son in his hand. They do that today though.
Right.
Like I don't care who you
And
are.
I got a theory that I think is to blame, but I want to hear from the two of you and why you guys think that code went away.
So it's hard for me. I struggle with answering this a little bit because I can't say that I have the answers. I read an article actually that talked about how public money has been spent researching certain topics to truly come up with solutions to those questions. And this is a question that we need researched. What gun violence is something that has been underfunded. So we know what's going on and we know who are perpetrating the crime, but we don't all the way know why. We could say certain things going on in the household and certain, lack of education, but like, what about the drugs and how the drugs affect, people and really where are these guns coming from? And, an undeveloped mind who's more prone to doing a wild action without understanding the consequences. What is the real scientific research behind some of these things? So I think in terms of how we're spending our money, we're spending a lot of money to hire police officers to lock people up because we thought that was the solution. Once we recognize that it isn't, let's better spend this money to come up to do the research to find how do we really solve this problem. I guess that's what I leaned on.
Right.
Placing a Band-Aid on it. That's what I call it. Instead of actually getting to the root of the problem, and talking to people and finding out and finding a solution.
That too.
Oh, we just gonna put a Band-Aid on it. Like even with the developments, like and like how they tore down a lot of the projects in the city, and we put these new housing developments. But you're still not changing the mindset of that community. You're not finding out of getting them jobs. We rebuilding around the area, but are you giving the kids, the community, are you giving these people jobs? No, you're bringing in outsiders. So now you putting a Band-Aid on it.
Right.
Or we'll give you this new, be quiet, but you're not actually changing the mindset or getting to the root of the problem of fixing things. And we have a tendency of doing that. Like you said, unfortunately, money talks.
Right.
Money talks. So.
And I think you hit on what I believe is to blame. So when you talk about drugs, right, I think if you look at the age group of those who are committing most of the crime right now, right, it's probably going to be 16, 17, up to like right under 30, right, for the majority. Those kids, if you want to call them kids, some of them adults and they, mid to upper 20s, they are the kids of the crack epidemics, right? So when you think about a change and what happened, right, there was a time where, as you mentioned, there was governance between even people in the street, right? There was an educated street dude that would tell the next street dude, put your gun up, you don't see the kids and everything else out there, we ain't about that right now, right? But over time, you had a generation come about that was most of the fathers weren't around. A lot, damn near half of the mothers were, if not in and out of rehab, just gone anyway, right? So now that generation, that age group became an age group that raised themselves, right? And I'm not talking about the kids who are 17 to 25 now. I'm talking about their parents, right? Their parents were the kids of the first generation of crack affected, community folk, right? Gone was the Miss Charlene whooped my ass because I was doing what I ain't supposed to do. That went away, right? And now you had these kids that never had the tutelage of their grandmother saying, no, if Miss Charlene catches ass doing whatever, she gonna put hands on them, and that was okay. And now you got the parents now that'll go up to the school and fight the teacher, right? So I believe that's where we got away from, at least if you was going to choose to be in the streets, there was some governance even over that, right? And if you were going to, become educated, right? We went from a time where, like, when I was even in school, like, if somebody was just talking back to the teacher, we was like, damn, Jerome crazy.
Your mama coming up here.
Somebody, you know what I'm saying? To now, it's like the things that happen in schools is crazy. Like, I can't even fathom some of the language that's used, the behavior and these types of things. But when I really, like, just me, myself, and I'll sit around with, Eb, that's one of the producers here, and some other folks, we'll talk about it, and it's just like, if you can think of something to point to, it's when all of that, when the community just went to shit, when the crack and cocaine epidemics hit. You know what I'm saying? And now I think that at least I kind of look at Instagram, I look at social media as it's a gift and a curse. But the one gift that I do see, because I'm the type of person that thinks that love and positivity is always going, reign supreme and shine through. I think that people are so interested in posting their highlights that you got to perform at least a little bit of highlights to even have them, right? So what I mean with that is, like, if you're a deadbeat dad, but you see, is a girl dad, hashtag posts and everything else going on, it's like, man, let me go get my daughter, right? You know what I'm saying? And I think that there's a lot of that type of stuff going because people want to stunt in all of these ways, whether it's success, whether it's I want this car with it. But if you want to keep that up, there's some things that you have to do to kind of keep that up. And I think parenting is one of those things that it's kind of coming back in style, if you will. You know what I mean? And hopefully we'll get some better governance, some better education, and all of those types of things to come back. Let's get back on topic a little bit.
That was a good point, though.
Thank you. I'm gonna get into a scenario that I wanna ask everybody here if let's find out if we snitches or not. Let's find out if we snitches. This one ain't that deep. This one ain't that deep. So let's answer this one truthfully, right? So, a 21-year-old man was involved in a hit and run last month where he killed a 29-year-old woman and fled the scene, leaving her job at 3:45 a.m. crossing Broad and Lehigh when it happened. I'm gonna ask all of y'all. I'm gonna start with you, Giovanni. If you saw this happen and you knew exactly who this driver was, would you tell him?
All right, well, it is a tough thing, right? And particularly because of my background. What I would personally do, I would go to the individual. Before I wouldn't go to the police. I would go to the individual to see if I could get him to do the right thing. I'm saying, I think that would be the best course for me, given the circumstances and stuff like that. One of the big problems is that when you talk about crime and you're talking about people breaking the law, one of the biggest reasons why people are doing the things that they're doing is because the punishments in America are not seen. They're invisible. Like, you don't know what it's like to lock into a cell until you're actually there. Now imagine if it was more visible, like the punishments that exist for you doing certain things. If you really knew what they was about, how much it'll lessen things a little bit. Like you used to say, like in other countries, when you do something, they'll cut your head off or they'll cut your hand off or something like that.
You know what? This crazy
in a public setting.
When you mention that though,
Yes.
because I recently read a book that was kind of about something else, but they touched on that.
Yeah.
And the challenge there, and I'm not going to say that you're wrong or right, but the challenge that was mentioned in this book is there's been no shortage of hands getting cut off.
No.
Right? So that begs to think, is it just a human notion of I'm gonna get away with it? Like, whether people understand the crime or not, I'm sure there's a little less robberies and thefts in those types of countries.
Especially if you see it. Like,
but it's never ended though,
Yeah.
right? There's never been a time where they're not punishing people that way, where it's went away. You know what I mean? And people know I might get my hand cut off, but the dude that cut the hands off keep a job.
Yeah, no doubt about that. But I think that it's more powerful if it was more visible. It has more of an effect, as opposed to like, you know, somebody got locked up that's been away for 30 years. You just don't see him no more.
100%. That was my pop. My pop
That's
spent
it.
29 years in prison, and his reasoning, and that's my reason. Along with my mom was crack addicted early, and like me, I've never touched a drug. I've never drank. I've never smoked. Never did none of that. And not that I was scared of prison. Like when I was young, I did my share of dumb stuff that could have caught me up. But I always didn't want to be my father. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to end up on the wrong side of the law like my father. You know what I'm saying? So that was kind of what kept me on a straight and narrow. So to your point, I had that visibility. You know, I was able to see like what that did to me, my family, etc. And I never wanted to go that route.
I tell people all the time, like, I spent 26 years in prison, right? For anybody that's really trying to do something with their life, prison is a complete waste of time. You can't get nothing done. And the hardest thing you can do when you're in prison is try to stay relevant. You can't even stay relevant in prison. So the more time you're in there, the less relevant you are. And the less you matter. Like, you're not doing nothing with your life, you're just existing. So I tell people, like, I share my story, I tell people, and I tell them, like, crime is not worth it. Like, it's not worth it to be a criminal. It costs too much. Like, a friend of mine, y'all see him on Instagram all the time, but it costs too much to be a criminal. You lose too much in the process when you commit crimes and going to prison, and back and forth, back and forth. It's crazy.
Alicia, would you snitch? Would you tell on this driver?
Like Giovanni said, to be honest, if I knew who it was, no, depending on who the person was. Because some people, it's just not going. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get through to them, regardless of what you say. They're going to do what they want to do. So it really depends on the person. If I can talk to them and tell them to do the right thing, because if it was you or your family, you would want justice. You got to take accountability for your actions. And that's every day, all day, no matter how small, you really have to take accountability. And that's something we lost. Nobody wants to take accountability. Everybody wants to be baby. No, we do. I mean, a lot of mothers, unfortunately, when I worked in the cell, he had a little rap sheet. And I heard him tell his mother, go put your house up and get me out of here.
Wow.
That's your mother. She worked all this for her house to put, you have nothing, but you want to put her house up to get you out for the umpteenth time.
Right.
For his ass to go back and mom ain't
exactly.
got no house.
No accountability. And when you see the parent, oh, call my mom. I'm not calling your mom. You're a grown man.
Right.
I'm not calling your mother. You're grown. But I've gotten that. That's first. Go get my mom. Go get my dad. There's nothing they can do at this point because now I'm here. So you got to go through your process.
You stole my answer a little bit too. Shoe Jack, you gonna tell on him? What's going on?
Right.
You know who hit this lady.
Right. So yeah, snitch. I just can't subscribe to that name, that word snitch. But I'm down to protect my community. But also, y'all talked about justice, and I don't think going to prison is the best form of justice. I really don't. But if I knew the person, I'd do what G said. I would go to him first and tell him, yo, you got to make that right. Like that's 100% out of order. You got to make that right, man. You took somebody's life. And from there, how it went, I'm not sure what I would do, but I'll tell you this, I'm down to protect my community. I'm gonna make sure my community is safe.
Right.
So I just need to know if it's a reward involved. No, but I feel like
They going up.
you know what I'm saying?
After like 24 hours.
It depends.
They going up.
You know what I'm saying? Oh, they 25,000.
Yeah.
Sometimes it don't take
To
that
unlock
much.
me,
Don't take that much. No, but I think for me, it depends on my relationship with that person. And it's crazy to say, but I'm going to say it because I think a lot of people think this way. But it also depends on who the victim was. And I know that sounds crazy.
No.
Right? But based on just the severity of this instance and what happened, and I know everybody's life matters and all of that type of thing, but if I was really put in that situation and this was something that really became a big story and this was just a tragedy and this person who did it, I know who they is, but I don't really mess with them like that. I might have to come forward, right? But if it's like, my brother, one of my guys, somebody that I'm just real close to, I might take y'all route and just say, look, you gotta, you know what I mean? Like I can't even associate myself with you no more. I ain't gonna tell on you. But if you don't, make this right, I can't ride with you like I used to. You know what I'm saying? But that's probably my honest answer to something like that. That's a tough one. It's a tough one.
This is a tough question.
Tough one. You mentioned earlier hip hop music, man. Yeah, you probably can't turn a hip hop music on without a song without somebody talking about being a snitch or being a rat or what they ain't gonna do, and then obviously what they is doing, they incriminating themselves on wax these days.
Right.
You mentioned that you think that had a part to play in your naivete and ignorance as a young boy that led you to doing some time. Speak on that a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, hip hop culture is that's where we watch all the cool people doing all the cool stuff, right? You listen to the music sound good, and it really sets the stage on, well, at least it did for me, on basically I wasn't able to understand that this is just art. I thought this was really direction on how I'm supposed to be and operate out here. I'm supposed to smash as many chicks as I can and not care about them. I'm supposed to make all the money, kill all the ops in my way to make the money. Mind you, I live in my mom's house. She take care of everything. She making all my food and washing my clothes. Right. But I go outside and I'm shooting anybody in the head. So that's when you listen to that music, whether you're conscious of it or not, you start to become that. And so I'm very purposeful with what I even listen to. And on a side note, even being released, when I was dealing with anxiety and PTSD from that, it was music that I turned to help calm me down. So music has a very it's very powerful in shaping us.
Yeah, I always say that about music because if you music is it's almost a sixth sense, right? You ever see like a child prodigy like play a piano or instrument or sing?
Sure.
It doesn't look like they're doing something technical if you like really look at it, right? But playing a piano is technical as hell. Yeah. But it looks like they're just speaking a language. You know what I'm saying? And especially those that do it so well. And when you speak toward, you know, it bringing you to a bad place, but then it also restoring you. You know what I'm saying? Like that's another language for me that I believe in. How y'all feel about music and the hip hop culture's influence on crime and violence?
Hip hop, you know, I'm old school. Hip hop.
How old school? Who's
Hip to the hip hop.
Did you fall in love with hip hop?
KRS-One,
okay.
MC Light.
You was talking that stuff though. Yeah, that's what's up.
You know, but the difference is you got to learn the difference between entertainment purposes and a message.
Right.
A lot of old school music, even
some
some today had a message.
Right.
It was something behind what they were saying.
Right.
Now, I can just talk about anything. And like you said, like Michael Jordan, everybody, I want to be like Mike. I want to do. You know, we look at him.
People emulate people.
And looking at music now, they can't rap without saying bitch. You know, referring to the women. That's what the young men say. Oh, you a bitch. This is that. But you don't have to answer to what you're called. And unfortunately, a lot of us, the young ladies, oh, that's cute, and that's not cute. I'm not a bitch, because those fighting words when you see that today. We fighting.
Oh, man, yeah, I know what type of officer she was. I'm not playing no game.
I'm playing no game.
Okay.
You gonna call me by my name.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just a level of respecting yourself. You really have to, it comes from within. And a lot of us got away from that. You got to be respecting each other. It's okay to say, hey, sister, you look good. Nothing's wrong with that.
Right.
Well,
You
today's
know,
society, it might be, depending where you at.
What, Me Too movement?
I think it plays a part, right? But I think what plays an even bigger part is who you associate with, who you decide to surround yourself with. That plays a bigger part, you know what I'm saying? Like your circle, people you call your friends, what they involved in, because usually whoever you associate with and what they involved in, you follow in that same road. And you know, music, it does have this influence. But you know, somebody can listen to music and not get wrapped up into it.
Definitely.
It can happen. That does happen.
I'm sure you listen to some of them same songs that you thought was you know what I mean? But now you're just like, these bars was hot, but them bars was cold.
Exactly. But I mean, coming from my community, I think the majority of people didn't go to prison. The majority of people went to school and have jobs, and they've been operating in society for a long time. You know, I haven't lived in other cities, but I know one thing about the Philly culture that I came up in, just like a celebration of like the gangster and the drug dealer. You know, there's this psychology like they the cool people, when no, they actually are the ignorant people. The people that, you know, was able to listen to music was like, okay, Jay-Z, that's cool, but I'm gonna go back to school. You know what I'm saying? That they the cool people. So, yeah, the majority of people didn't get caught up like that, to your point.
And I hope people are listening, right? Because we got 2 reform citizens here right now, right? And they're giving, I hope, to some young bucks, some young boys, some young women that are listening that's on the wrong side right now, that are understanding, like, these are people that did it. They telling you, don't waste your life doing all of this nonsense for people that ain't gonna be around when it's time for you to be in there asking for your mom, asking for your dad, and that type of thing. Like, let's get on the right track, man. Let's do what we need to do. And as I mentioned reform, I'm mentioning reform because reform doesn't mean free everybody. So reform, justice reform is big in the news right now. Obviously, Meek Mill is leading that charge. And I salute Meek for what he's doing. I salute his maturity level. I salute him coming through his situation and all that type of stuff. But I want you criminals, the ones that's really out here committing crime and doing nonsense, to understand that reform is not for you. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about some of the negative laws, some of the what we call it, the laws that were made systematically, racist laws and things like that that were created to keep Black and brown and Latino and those types of communities down and locked behind bars. Everybody knows that there's laws, there's legislation, there's all sorts of things that were set up not in our favor, purposely. That's what justice reform is here to do. Justice reform is, it doesn't matter what color you look, what race, what creed, you do a certain crime, you should get the same time, the same punishment as someone else that looks different than you. That's what reform is about. I wanted to speak up and say that because I think that it gets misconstrued, and I hate the cycle of, you know, someone loses their life, right? Oh, my baby, we got to do something about this. You see it all up and down your timeline, right? What we could do, crime and violence, all that. 9 times out of 10, people know who's doing it. People know why this person was gunned down in most situations. People know what's happening. And then as soon as that person or people are caught, you see something else on your timeline. Free the real. Free my nigga Molly. Free this person. They got a king locked up. It's like, wait a minute. We know this reform not for him, right? He did this. And I think that's what we're talking about tonight is just, it ain't even about not snitching, but it's about also not supporting that type of behavior. You know what I'm saying? And to your point, we've made it cool to support that type of behavior. You know what I mean? We got a little bit of time left, but if any one of y'all want to speak toward reform, especially as some reform folks and a law enforcer.
I would say it really, you have to look at the individual, a lot of things, you really do. Because some people get caught up in bad situations.
For sure.
And make bad decisions.
For sure.
But it wasn't from their heart. It was just something that happened and they just made a wrong move. So you really got to look at the individual. And like you said, a lot of stuff is not for us. And some stuff, it can be changed. And we need more in the community as far as, like, the kids have nothing. I mean, it's nothing.
Right.
I remember, they literally have nothing. Going to the library was even fun. They have nothing. I mean, like you said, they're putting money in the wrong places. I get it. You may think it may work, but talk to the people. You really have to talk to the people that have been there, like you said, bringing people. But I do believe in change. I do believe people can change, and it's okay to make a mistake, and you learn from it. There's nothing wrong with that. I do believe in any of the law enforcement. I believed in that, and I always have compassion. You can't lose compassion. You really need that to reform anything. You got to have compassion, understanding, and everybody doesn't come. Some people were, like you said, raised outside the city. Some people raised in the hood. You got to have that communication barrier to be able to sit down and have those conversations to understand where you're coming from. Have
Break that barrier down, you mean?
You got to have empathy. Until that happens, there's not much change that's going to happen.
Either one of y'all, real quick, I do want to get into these last 3 questions, but they giving me a wrap. So either one of y'all want to speak toward reform real quick.
Well, I mean, obviously, the way the system is set up, some changes definitely need to happen. Need to balance it out to make the process a little bit more fair. You know, it shouldn't be
When you were released, not to cut you off, but did you benefit from any of the new changes that are going on with justice reform? Was that a part of?
Well, no. Well, you know, in my situation, I'm still in court because my case is still pending in court. But what ultimately freed me was Obama putting certain judges on the United States Supreme Court, who ultimately ruled that it was unconstitutional to mandatory sentence juveniles to life in prison. So I benefited from that. I was able to bring my case back based on those new laws that said that my sentence was unconstitutional. So, and that's how I was able to get out. But in terms of my other ongoing claims, they're in court. But I don't know, like, I always felt like, even when I was in there, I always felt like it was something wrong because I don't know how I got sentenced to life in prison at 16, and I'm not even one who did it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was with a bunch of adults, and I was essentially held accountable for the actions of an adult. There's nowhere area in life where that happens, but in criminal justice it happens, in the law it happens. You can be held accountable for the actions of an adult, even though you're a kid.
Wow.
So I mean,
sad.
the process needs to be fixed. It needs to be refined, and things need to be a little bit more fair. Like, you know, like you go in and you don't have a lot of money, then you're gonna feel the brunt of that. If you got money, you get a little better treatment. Not all the time, but in most cases you will. So, you know, but I think that, you know, just going back to like the snitching thing, right? I think that the best thing for that is to put yourself in a situation where you don't have to worry about nobody snitching on you.
Facts.
Stay out the street.
Facts.
Stay out the street.
Anything toward reform?
I guess what I want to say is, first of all, we definitely need reform. The system doesn't work. You know, it's not making our communities safer. It's not really helping people unless those people have enough to want to help themselves. But to that point, when you talked about like Frida Real and the person who actually committed a murder, you know, I represent people. I wasn't innocent of my crime. I went to prison for third-degree murder. It was an accident, but I'm responsible for that death, and that's something that's not lost on me. And that's kind of fuels what I do now. So, did I deserve punishment? Yes. But I also want to stand here and say that people are capable of change. You have to give them an opportunity to change. So I do believe in the justice system that is about forgiveness and humanity. So for that dude that may have murdered somebody, you gotta go to prison. You gotta be punished. But I also want to give that man or woman an opportunity to change. So the system that I would want to see reformed provides that opportunity, and you have to really think of dynamic ways to do that. I have some solutions.
Definitely.
And I'm gonna put them forward at some point.
Yes, I know you are. I know you are, because you're doing some great things. I think my wrap up to reform, one thing that I just believe in hardcore is education. I believe that there's not nearly enough money spent on education in the United States of America. I even believe that we're not educating our kids the way we should be. And we'll probably have a whole show on that. But to just give you a sample, right? We live in a time now where we have FaceTime, we have Google Chat, we have all these types of ways that we can put anyone's face in any classroom. But in the United States, we haven't figured out that the best mathematician in the world should be making superstar NBA athlete money to teach every math class in our country, right? That's possible nowadays, right? You can pay the teachers what they making, or you can even have just a teacher's aide in each classroom to make sure that the kids are learning. But they can be being taught by the best mathematician. And we have companies, you got Amazon, you got Google, they figured out this practice. Let you be the 14-year-old that invented this small tiny battery, and you done graduated from college at 17. Guess what Google do? We got a $2 million salary to start if you'd like to come work with us. But the United States hasn't figured that out yet, right? So education is what we need more of. Last topic that we're talking about tonight, cooperating with the law. Do you find it more difficult for people to cooperate when you're trying to get information about a crime? Was that a part of your job, trying to ask people who did it?
Of course. Being the first responder as far as a lot of homicides, like I said, it started out on the bottom. A lot of homicides. It's gotten worse. I've seen the change from coming out in 2000 till now.
When you say it's gotten worse, what's gotten worse?
Not snitching. People, it's harder to talk to the community. But we got to take some fault, because some police officers make it bad for those that do care, you know. But like I said, if you go out and do what you're supposed to do, talk to the people, talk to your community, get to know them, you'd be surprised who talks to you, because they trust and they believe in you. And that goes a long way. And thankfully I did develop a lot of good relationships, just like random talking to people, getting to know them. They gave me information, whether it was by a note, phone call, or literally walk past the car, drop a note, a phone call, anything, because they trust and they believed in you, and you know, and I'm grateful for that.
And you said you said you could talk to people a little bit more way back when you started,
Yes.
and you saw that worsen over time. What do you think made it worse? What do you think made people say, I ain't talking to them?
Like you said, now
Besides
we
the police being a little blue codish.
now you got, like you said, you got the Facebook, you got everybody want to be on Instagram Live. Not that it didn't happen, the police shootings, unlawful things, the beatings and things like that is more magnified. We're seeing it actually more versus than just hearing about it. Now we're actually seeing it.
It's to Giovanni's point, seeing it makes it crazy.
And people are now, oh, that's not going to happen to me, my son, or this and that. So people are not talking. They're really reluctant to talk.
So you basing it on social media thing, man. Last question, we got just a few minutes. I want each of y'all to talk on it. I think I've already qualified mine or offered mine with education. But what can we do to overcome the stop snitching culture? And I heard you mention that you just don't even like the word. Maybe the word needs to go away. You know, and any one of y'all that want to go, probably we got 30 seconds apiece. How can we overcome, real quick, to sum up this show?
Well, I think that in order to have some type of meaningful effect, it has to be multi-layered. It has to be something that's coming from multiple angles. You gotta really pull people out the street, because as long as people is entrenched in the street and that culture, it's going to be hard to do it. It's going to be hard to do away with that. But if you could get people out the streets, get them to see that crime is not really worth it, that it's a waste of time and life, then you make some progress there. You're more likely to make it there as opposed to, trying to get people to start snitching.
Facts. Shuja.
Shujah?
Shujah, I'm sorry. I think I'll be calling you
This
Shuja all
hard.
show. Shujah.
Shameless plug. Watch Walkies. That's how you.
Yes. Walkies on YouTube.
No. But what I want to do is just step up as a leader in the community. I think you're right too, G. You got to pull people out, and also just you got to be a force to say that's wrong, this is right. You know, or give a person an opportunity to find out what's right for them and not just follow that. So.
Wrap it up for us, Alicia.
Take accountability for your actions. Communication.
Better
Go
communication.
You got to look outside the box. Communication. It's okay to talk to people not in your community. It's okay to venture out your community and get involved. You got to get involved, and like you said, educate. You can't blame everybody else. Educate yourself.
Educate yourself.
Educate yourself. You got to.
So I think what I'm hearing, man. First of all, great show. I think what I'm hearing is everybody got to work together, right? I think G touched on it. It's multi-layered. It's not just the community. It's not just the cops. It's not just the system, justice, and all of that. But it's everything combined. We got to educate ourselves, and we definitely need more leaders in the communities. We need you got to get back to the old days. You see a young boy doing something that ain't right. I'm sure you do it all the time. I'm sure you do it. You know what I'm saying? And I help youth as well myself. I go and speak to folks all the time. That's what we need. We need more of that leadership. We need more education, more people working together. Real quick, y'all know who it is. It's Kyrie Terrell, at Kyrie Terrell. Give me your Instagram real quick.
SHUJAMOORE. You can find me everywhere.
Where can y'all find y'all?
At G7839.
He don't even know his. He guessing. That's like your phone number these days.
RN Lele 6060.
There it goes. Thank y'all for watching 2-1 Live on My New Philly, where something's always new and everything's always Philly.
Peace out.
Thank you, man. That was a good show.
Of course.
Great show.
Good time. Good time.